Here I have a 2x1 rectangle. In this video, we'll be looking at the rotate, mirror, circular, and rectangular tools. Let's start with rotate because it's probably the simplest and does what you'd expect. So here I've drawn a 2" by 1" rectangle. If I instead wanted a 1" by 2" rectangle, I could just delete this and start all over. Or I could rotate it so that the 1" dimension was going horizontally and the 2" dimension was going vertically. So when I click on the rotate tool, we have two important features that come up. The select button, which is where you pick what geometry you'd like to rotate, and the center point button, which indicates to Inventor what point you'd like to rotate around. Now I could rotate around an arbitrary point, but perhaps I wanted the center of this rectangle to stay the same. Well, we can use what we learned in previous videos to allow us to do that. So I'm going to close this for a moment, go over to the construction tool, and draw the diagonal of this rectangle. Now I'm going to click on the rotate tool, select all four corners of my rectangle, and I will select for the center point the midpoint of the diagonal of the rectangle, which I could find once my cursor turns green. Now it appears Autodesk is having difficulty finding the midpoint. This is a good time to show you a quick way around that in case that happens to you. So let's close the rotate tab. So when an inventor is trying to find the midpoint of a line, when you're inside the windows of one of these tools, whether it be rotate or scale, sometimes it has difficulty finding it, but it has less difficulty finding endpoints. So we're just going to draw a construction line. I still have constructions selected from the midpoint, and that's it. And press escape to get out. And now we'll see that when I pull up the rotate tab and I select all four sides of the rectangle, we're able to find the endpoint a lot easier. Let's just click yes to that and rotate this rectangle 90 degrees. And there we have it. A 1x2 rectangle. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete those construction lines because they're not much use to us anymore. Next, let's look at the pattern tools. They allow us to duplicate the geometry we've already drawn in various ways. The rectangular tool allows us to duplicate our geometry in a grid-like fashion, a chosen amount of times in the x direction and a chosen amount of times in the y direction. You can even do it at an angle too, but let's start simple. So we click on the rectangular tool and highlight the geometry that we'd like to duplicate. Next, we click on the first direction. This will be our x direction. And now we have the choice to indicate how many times we'd like to repeat this geometry, how many times we'd like to duplicate it. I'm going to select 3. And I would like them to be 3 inches apart. So in this next dialog box, I'm also going to put 3. So now each point is 3 inches apart from its corresponding points. So all the top left corners are 3 inches apart, and all the top right corners are 3 inches apart. Now I could just click OK and end it there. I could go back and change this if I wanted 6 instead of, if I wanted them to be 6 inches apart instead of 3, or if I wanted 8 instead of 3. But I'm going to go back and change it to 3 and 3. Now there's another option here for the second direction, and we just created a pattern in the x direction. We could also do one in the y. So for this prop, click on the direction 2 arrow and click on a line that goes in the y direction. So right now the default is a count of 2 that are spaced 1 inches apart from the original. Well, clearly they're overlapping and a little too close. So I'm going to keep the 2, but I'm going to make these 4 inches apart. And now I have 6 rectangles. Next, let's look at the circular tool. Let's do this in context of an example. Perhaps you're making a circular robot. So let's draw a circle to represent the chassis. And let's say it's still in construction geometry, so let's just change that by selecting the circle and clicking the construction line. Now let's say you wanted this pattern at the front, right, back, and left side of your robot. Well, it's really easy to do with the circle tool. Let's click on circle, and just as we do with rectangular, let's highlight the geometry we'd like to duplicate. Next, we click the center point of which we'd like to rotate around this geometry around. The circular tool will allow us to copy our geometry around the circumference of a circle. So if we pick the point of the circle we'd like to rotate around, and we can see now that copied. But we said we only wanted four counts, and it goes through an angle of 360 degrees. Now if I wanted this at the front, back, and left, I could change this to 180 degrees and change this to 3, the count to 3. And now my pattern doesn't sweep through the entirety of the circle. But I'm going to change it back to 4 through an angle of 360 degrees. Finally, let's look at the mirror tool. Next, let's look at the mirror tool. But first, let's make this robot look a little more interesting and give it some horns. So we'll select the line tool, and we've created a nice horn. And we just, there's just one thing that's really important to remember is that the laser cutter will cut on any line. So if we were to send this design to the laser cutter, it would cut the circle out and this triangle out as separate pieces because there's a line dividing them. So we really want to make sure we trim lines like that. And now it's one solid shape. Now, I could draw the horn on the other side as well, but I would have to do a lot of dimensioning to make sure I got it just right, and I don't really want to do that. We could avoid all that work using the mirror tool. The mirror tool allows us to reflect our selected geometry over a specified line. So when we pick the mirror tool, we can see the first prompt is for the geometry, and the second prompt is for the line we would like to reflect over. We don't have a line we'd like to reflect over yet, so let's just draw that in construction geometry. So we click on this construction line, select the line tool, and just draw an arbitrary length line. And now that we have a line we can mirror over, we select our horn, select the mirror line prompt, click on the line we just drew, and click apply. Now we're done, and all we need to do is trim that extra line so our horn stays attached to a robot. And now we have a neat little base for a circular robot.